Hi. Today we're going to take a look at Ralph Waldo Emerson and his poetry. We've looked at his most famous essay, Self-Reliance, but we also want to take a look at transcendentalism as seen through his poetry. Now, I'll be one to admit that I'm not a real big fan of his essay, and I do kind of gravitate a little bit towards his thoughts, and definitely his belief about be your own person. But I will say I do really like his poetry, and I'm not a poetry person. Today we're going to go through the poem Each and All, and what I ask of you to do is that when I ask you to stop and mark your script, mark your poem, or do things, I ask that you do that, stop the video, and then complete the task. And there'll be times when I'll say turn to your partner and talk to them, and that is designed so that you guys can have this discussion so that you can together come up with, maybe instead of me telling you what it means, you can come up with it together. So please honor that request of when I say stop, you stop. When I ask you to discuss, you discuss. I would really appreciate that. At this time, have somebody at your table please read the poem together. You can take turns. One of you can do it. If you want to find an online person to read it to you, you can, although I will admit that those out there are not so good. So please take about 5 minutes and just read through each and all. Okay, so now you're back, and what we're going to do is we're going to dissect the poem a little bit into verses. Now, if you look at the poem, it looks like it's one long verse, and I get that. He didn't separate it into different sections, and that was his choice, and that was kind of revolutionary because back in those days, poetry had lots of rules, and not surprising, but Emerson did sometimes break the rules a little bit. So let's take the first section. It says, little thinks in the field yon red-cloaked clown of thee, from the hilltop looking down, and the heifer that lows in the upland farm, far heard lows not thine ear to charm. The sexton tolling the bell at noon dreams not of the great Napoleon, stops his horse and lists with delight, whilst his eyes sweep round yon alpine height. Nor knowest thou what argument thou life has to thy neighbour's creed has lent. All are needed by each one. Nothing is fair or good alone. So at this time, what I would like you to do is to highlight, we're going to only do this once in the first little bit, is highlight the end rhyme. Okay, so we can see that he has a pretty strong rhyme scheme, although I will say Napoleon and noon don't sound too much like they're like. But for the most part, he has a rhyme scheme, okay? And, but it is not like a sonnet. You'll notice that 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. It is not 14 lines, but it is pretty traditional. I'm going to have you draw a line, if you will, underneath this part because this is where the verse ends. And the other thing is at the end of this one is kind of his thesis. And I'm going to grab my highlighter there, a different highlighter. All are needed by each one. Nothing fair is good or good alone. Now this seems to be kind of the opposite of what um, the theme of transcendentalism is because if you remember, he didn't think you needed friends and that individualism was among everything. And here is all are needed by each one. Nothing is fair or good alone. And he's talking about kind of like the farm. In a farm, you have your heifers, and the sexton is kind of like the deacon of the church. You got the horse, you got the beautiful mountains, you got the neighbors, the fields, all of that together makes this a very beautiful scene. He says each one alone is is not as beautiful as everything being put together. Okay, so let's see how he takes this theme. Okay, the theme here, and how it continues to go throughout the poem. So looking at the next verse, he's talking about the birds. I thought the sparrow's note from heaven, singing at dawn on the elder bough. I brought him home in his nest at even. He sings the song, but it pleases not now. For I did not bring home the river and sky. He sang to my ear, they sang to my eye. Notice how his rhyme changed. You got heaven and bow, even and now, but then sky and I. So unlike the previous verse, which had a pretty strong rhyme scheme, this one did not. And how is he taking it? He's continuing it with the thought is that the song was beautiful because of the setting that it was a wrong. So the bird sang to the ear, but all of the things around the bow, the elder bow, and the singing, and the dawn, the nest, all of that added to the beauty of the song that he heard. Okay. Again, take your pencil and I want you to draw a line here. This is the end of kind of what might be considered the second verse. Okay, next one. All right. The delicate shells lay on the shore, the bubbles of the latest wave. Fresh pearls to their enamel gave, and the bellowing of the savage sea greeted their safe escape to me. I wiped away the weeds and foam, I fetched my sea-born treasures home. But the poor, unsightly, noisome things had left their beauty on the shore, with the sun and sand and the wild uproar. All right, so with this verse, I want you to stop the video, and in your groups, I want you to do like we did with the last two verses, is I want you to highlight the all, what is the larger picture, because we know the shells are part of the smaller picture. Some of the shells, they were beautiful because they were part of something bigger, the ocean. Take them away from their setting and they lose their beauty. So take a moment, stop the video, and at your tables, talk about those things that you would highlight that are part of the all. Okay. All right, welcome back. Some of the things that you could have highlighted were the things like the shore, the bubbles of the latest wave. Oh my gosh, look at how crazy that was. Oh, the fresh pearls that come from a shell, a savage sea, and that was they greeted their safe. But even the weeds and the foam, he brought them home, um, and they just destroyed their beauty. Notice in this poem, he kind of has a little bit of a juxtaposition. Oh, let me find the right one here. And he talks about, he actually lists how the unsightliness happens because we took the shells away. Okay. Again, let's take our pencil and let's draw a line to say that this is the end of the third verse. Okay. All right. Two more verses. All right. This one's a little bit of a sexist one, and it's always been a little bit hard to incorporate, but we're gonna tackle it here. The lover watched his graceful maid, as mid the virgin train she strayed, nor knew her beauty's best attire was woven still by the snow-white choir. At last she came to his hermitage, like the bird from the woodlands to the cage. The gay enchantment was undone, a gentle wife, but fairy none. Okay. Now notice that the rhyme scheme returned to the rhyme scheme of this one. Clown, down, farm, charm, no, noon, Napoleon. And now this one, we've got the maid, strayed, attire, squire, okay, undone, whoops, I skipped one, hermitage, page. So he has, if for his verses, he's kind of going one rhyme scheme and then a different one, and then back to the original one. This one's a little bit of a sad one, as you can see what I have written here. He's sort of saying here that the graceful maid was beautiful as long as she was pure and never became part of the cage. Now you may be wondering what the cage is. The cage is marriage. Okay? And as soon as they got married, um, she lost her beauty. So she was beautiful while the hunt was on, but once the hunt was over and she became this gentle wife, then she wasn't what he wanted her to be. Now remember, Emerson didn't believe that um, friends were necessary. However, he was married, and I wonder how she felt about this verse, okay? But he does go so far as to say that, she was like a bird, okay, from the woodlands, which is kind of described in the previous verse, remember that? And that she was beautiful, and that as soon as you took her out of her natural beauty, she lost it, okay? So definitely he's saying something here about marriage and how it takes people out of what they would normally be, okay? Again, let's put a line here to tell us that this is the end of this verse. So right now we have 4 verses, and we are headed towards the end. Now, the end of this is really the key part of this poem. Okay? Then I said, I covet truth. Beauty is unripe childhood's cheat. I leave it behind with the games of youth. As I spoke, beneath my feet the ground pine curled its pretty wreath. Running over the club moss burrs, I inhaled the violet's breath. Around me stood the oaks and firs, pine cones and acorns lay on the ground. Above me soared the eternal sky, full of light and deity. Again I saw, again I heard, the rolling river, the morning bird. Beauty through my senses stole, I yielded myself to the perfect whole. Okay? So let's first do this. Let's highlight his dialogue. Okay? And if you remember, transcendentalists coveted truth, and truth through self awareness, and truth through knowledge. Okay? And he said, I covet, or I am jealous of truth. And this beauty of of unripe childhood's cheat, I leave it behind with the games of youth. I've often struggled with these lines, kind of like, well, what exactly is he saying here? What are the games of youth? Maybe just the idea that you're supposed to be by yourself. You're supposed to be this individual, but to understand that you're part of the perfect whole. There's a lot of different kinds of interpretations, and this is a basic American Lit class and not a philosophy class. So we could get into his, that whole part of it. But he is talking about the perfect whole, and if you remember that the divine soul was something um, was very much a part of his belief system. What I want you to do right now is to stop the video, please, and find all of the words that kind of reinforce the idea that as he stood on this hill and looked out among it, that he was a part of a heavenly creation, but a deity, that a God, a heaven as seen through nature. So take a moment, stop the video, and highlight those words. Okay. So you probably are highlighting the same things that I just did: eternal and deity, um, and beauty, and the perfect whole. I probably could have hit that one too, I just didn't. Okay. And it's kind of the whole idea that this is a perfect statement of the transcendental belief. The speaker saying if he wants to truly enjoy beauty, leave it in its natural setting. We're all connected. It's kind of a Lion King mentality. All things, mankind included, are connected. Destroy each, and you destroy all. And we're going to read a poem called The Sound of Thunder, or we're going to read a short story called Sound of Thunder. Or did you read that when you were a freshman? And about the butterfly. Okay? The next 2 poems that I'm going to have you read for Thursday is, the first one is called Days. This one is my favorite one. I kind of want you to do the same thing that we just did today, is I want you to annotate it. I want you to look at the rhyme, if you will. I want you to see if you can find, personification or simile. But what do you think he's trying to say about the gifts of each day? The other poem is also on your paper. It is called a Concord Hymn. Concord Hymn is actually a song. So if you look at it, it looks like one of the hymns that you see in church. And it actually was written because it was written to celebrate the bridge where the American Revolution started. And the greatest gift that anybody can give to a cause is the gift of their life. And this was actually sung by a choir, and inside the choir was Henry David Thoreau. Okay, so your assignment for the rest of the class period is to take these two poems and annotate them. See if you can figure out the rhyme scheme, see if you can figure out the theme behind it, and how does it relate to transcendentalism. All right, we'll talk to you later. Have a good day.